What sounds like a dream job but actually sucks? I worked as a private investigator. It was what you picture only maybe 1% of the time. The rest of the time it was just sitting there and waiting for something to happen. It was super boring. I thought working in a video game store would be awesome. It was a store similar to GameStop, but we also dealt with retro consoles and games going all the back to the Atari 2600. I imagined it as being able to finally share all my useless video game knowledge with people, play video games in my downtime, and helping customers. Instead, people treated us like a pawn shop and would get mad when I wouldn't give them $50 for a PS2 basketball game no one has cared about since 2003. Also, the store owner only wanted attractive young girls working the store in order to bring in customers, and I happened to be a 26-year-old chubby guy. I worked at GameStop. It was boring as frick and the hours sucked, but frick retail. Bouncer security at the topless pools in Vegas hotels. You spend all day running around the pool yelling at douches to stop taking pictures. Video game tester. My old roommate was one for decades and he hooked me up with a part-time gig when they were hiring. Imagine the most annoying, stupid, trivial bullcrap parts of video games that make you want to rage quit. Frick with only that, in an unfinished setting with tons of unrendered crap for 8 hours a day. Exactly, many people forget that as a video game tester you don't just get to play the fun parts of the game like it's a hobby. When it's your job, you need to spend all your time trying every way you can to break the game so you can find out the problems before it goes to market. Personally, if I had to work in games, I'd rather work in the programming and creative end. Being a veterinarian. I don't know if it sounds like a dream job, but a bunch of people I meet say they always wanted to be one. Oh, you like animals? Then have some, but do something else for a job, unless you also like the idea of killing a lot of them. I never got used to it. Being a roadie for a popular band. Everyone thinks you just get to hang out with the artists all day and travel the world, but you work long days and are constantly either on a bus or a plane. You don't get the time to really visit the cities you are in because you are in the venue working, and the second the show is done and you get everything struck, then you are right back onto the bus or in a van on the way to the airport. Wedding planner. Someone is always pee at you. Even if the bride and groom are chill, there's a mother mill, maid of honor or vendor unhappy. And frankly, at the end of the day you want the client to feel they've been treated fairly, but you really need the vendor to leave happy. You can't afford to alienate someone in the industry, especially in a smaller town. This is actually why full service planning is better than day of for the planner. It's easier to avoid misunderstandings when you're involved in contract negotiations from the get-go. Working at a dog kennel. Thought it'd be fun to play with 40 dogs. I mean, it was, but I spent most of my time cleaning doggy and getting pee on. Shooting instructor or gun store manager, assuming you're into guns. I did both and got tired of dealing with idiots. As a shooting instructor, I dealt with many people that considered themselves experts even though they had no reason to, and so often, they were barely more than novice when it came to shooting ability and or gun safety. As a gun store manager, I dealt with same expert mentality. So many people think that because they own guns, they are automatically an expert. I'm from the UK, so I've no access to guns. However, I've played the Time Crisis arcade video games, so therefore I'm an expert. Being a high-powered attorney at a big law firm. Yes, you make 120-200k, but most of them are actively drinking themselves to death due to stress, horrible working conditions and hours, and having no life-work balance. I'm an attorney and no amount of money in the world would convince me to go through the big law thing. I'm a government attorney instead. So basically the total opposite situation. Low stress, great hours, happy co-workers, the work-life balance other people would die for. I don't get paid much at all, but being able to actually enjoy my life and have friends and hobbies is worth it to me. Working on a winery vineyard. Highly smelly. You get to see all the crap other than grapes that go into the press and therefore into the wine. The grape bins are a nesting ground for black widows, etc. People always think it sounds glamorous when I tell them where I used to work. Couldn't be more the opposite. I'm done with wine for good. Thanks for this. Animal trainer. People think you're playing with dogs, horses, dolphins, tigers, what have you all day, but hands-on work is the smallest part of the job. The rest of the time you're cleaning enclosures, preparing meals, and filling out paperwork. You do this 24/7, 365 in the middle of summer and the dead of winter, all weather conditions. And the training sessions, endless repetition. I work in veterinary medicine and everyone thinks it's all puppies and kittens. Lol no, it's fractious cats trying to murder you and giant dogs that really don't want their nails trimmed and so much poop. Don't even get me started on anal glands. Nursing. People who say I want to be a PD nurse have no clue what it is like to work with the kids' butthole parents. No part of nursing sounds appealing to me. Being around sick people all day, working ridiculous shifts, knowing that people's lives are in your hands, having to deal with some gross crap on the daily. No thanks. I don't need to go anywhere near that field. Acting isn't great, especially if you're a kid and especially if you're a musical theater kid teen. There is so much pressure and pushing around, and if you haven't popped out the womb dancing, singing and acting, trained in ballet, tap, jazz, perfect vibrato and diction and emotion, you are likely going to be overlooked every time. Dealing cards in a casino is about as much fun as trying to keep a room full of drunk, abusive parents from beating the crap out of you because the cable's out and the fridge is empty. I once answered a newspaper ad looking for a chick sexer as a summer gig. It was not even remotely close to what I was hoping for. Night watchman at the city cemetery. Vandals do damage, or try to enter the mausoleums. There's no rest, even for the dead. Being a teacher, working with kids and teaching the future is a dream. Plus you get summers off. The kids don't listen. Parents hate you, overworked, underpaid, and overstress. You forgot corrupt administrations. Working at a pet store that sells puppies and kittens. You can't believe how much crap and fur I went home covered in. Also taking their temperatures with anal thermometers. Not fun. Giving them all kinds of meds you're just barely trained to administer. I think the pink one's for kennel cough, or was that the one to stop them from eating poop? Also, all the cheap little critters, like the mice and such, when they're injured, instead of calling the vet, they put them in the freezer to die. I refused to do that. I took them all home and cared for them as best I could. All this for minimum wage because so many people were clamoring for the job. I think being a famous actor, musician, athlete would actually be really crappy for most people. Celebrities live lives of constant intrusion, and so many of them are freaking depressed for one reason or another. Obviously, that's not everyone, but fame probably isn't as great as it's worked up to be. I hope that if I ever become famous for something, I'll only be famous to a niche group of people. Something where the general public isn't really aware but a small group of people who are really into the thing you've done would. That way I could still lead a somewhat normal life and only have to deal with a few nerds going, oh my god, you're Galactic Dude 7 every once in a while. Most of them, work is still work. Agreed. My motto is, find a hobby you love and a job you can tolerate. Doing something you love as work just ruins it. Filmmaking is very difficult to pull off. You have to manage hundreds of people on set and in post. Just think about the fact that all movies are shot extremely out of order and you will realize the nightmare it is to imagine a 10-second take working into a narrative of 120 minutes. But for me the love of telling a visual story trumps the hard work. I think you mean shot extremely out of order, not crap extremely out of order. Being an architect isn't so awesome. I'm only a third-year student, but I've heard so much from professors, who are required to be licensed architects with their own practices, about how brutal the job is. Bitchy clients, contractors, construction managers, cruel bosses, meager pay, all-nighters, lack of friends, and endless competition with every architect in the world. School feels like a brutal hazing, but it's just as difficult out in the real world. You can only do it if you're obsessed with design and expect no reward or recognition. Any success usually happens if you are extremely lucky. Scientist. You don't get to shout eureka on daily, weekly or even yearly basis. Most things you do don't actually work. You can spend months on an experiment to have it fail, and even when something does work, it's likely going to just contradict all the other stuff you've done. If by some miracle something comes together after countless hours of banging your head against a brick wall, when you try to publish your findings, some reviewer will want you to replicate your work, just using expensive lasers that your lab can't afford. But somehow, I love it. Or you work and work and work at figuring something out. It works finally and you write it up. Send it into a journal, only then to find out that some jerk from an institution with more funding and prestige is publishing something similar and it's already in review. President of the United States of America. It's extremely stressful. You have almost no privacy. Your every move is criticized, down to what you eat at diners or in your own home. As Commander-in-Chief of the military, you are personally responsible for sending soldiers to their deaths and weighing those deaths against the nation's foreign policy goals and domestic safety. You're often forced to make decisions where every outcome has some negative consequence for large groups of people. Your ability to get things done are limited by the other branches of government, as well as the entrenched interests of Washington, D.C. And no matter what party you belong to, there's an entire cable news network dedicated to rallying the population against you 24 hours a day. There's a reason why so many presidents age so quickly in the White House, and why so many of them expressed relief at leaving the job. Nobody knew it could be so complicated. Penetration tester ethical hacker. Used to do that for a living and frankly hated it. I discovered after a couple of years that it just wasn't my thing. Yeah, but you get to tell people you're a penetration tester. That's gotta make up for it a fair bit. Honestly, I imagine being a media creator, movies, video games, author, would be pretty terrible on the work side of things. The deadlines, if your work is popular need to constantly fight off executive meddling, the need to devote a good portion of your time to your work. Clubhouse attendant for professional baseball teams. You are every player's personal slave. Have to clean their cleats at night's end and scrub out all the stained pants. Oh yeah, you never think about that when someone dives headfirst getting all dirty. I do. I think of it every time someone slides. Being a pyrotechnician. I mean, I wouldn't say it sucks compared to many jobs, but the task of setting up fireworks displays requires being outside in the full sun in what is usually 100°/37 degrees Celsius weather. There is a lot of heavy lifting as well as detail-oriented things such as reading cue sheets and hooking up wiring. Then once the show has fired, you get to clean up until about 2 AM. We're busy all year, so translate the same thing to the freezing cold and/or rain. The week of the 4th of July usually involves months of planning ahead of time, loading unloading hot humid shipping containers, several consecutive days of setup fire show teardown, 14-hour days at least, followed by unloading all the trucks after all is said and done. It can be very rewarding hearing a crowd cheering after a fireworks show, but man, it is a lot of manual labor. It pays about as well as a good retail job, $15 HR. Not really a dream job, but I always thought lifeguarding in high school would be a sweet gig. Hot sun, tan, lots of girls, not hard work at all, swimming, cue sitting in a chair staring at water for 8 hours straight, because you can't stand to look at the overweight 12-year-old online gamer kid whose parents treat the pool like a daycare and comes there 6 days a week. Also tries to talk about the new Call of Duty every day. Q being completely bored of your mind because there is no music, at least at my pool, no books, no nothing. You think there's plenty to think about, until you run out of things 2 hours into your workday, get tired of talking to your brain. Q being baked to death in 95-degree heat and constantly sweating, and being completed exhausted on the 3-minute drive home and falling asleep as soon as you open the door to your bedroom. Being out in the sun plus extreme boredom plus static environment equals soul crushing. Pay is also trash, and constantly asked to fill in on days off because of shortage in lifeguards. For me it was travel for work. I installed radar systems on offshore oil rigs around the world, which meant I couldn't make plans with people. Plans I did make were at risk of being cancelled in case of client emergency. Plus I'm staying miles offshore on a boat, so you don't get to check out the local areas. You get back to shore in time to catch the next plane for the next job. I got super depressed and lonely after a few years in it. I missed my GF and my dog. Everyone thinks it sounds amazing, but it sucked hard. I did something similar, but it was installing software at military facility all around the world for different government. The trouble with this is that these places are middle of nowhere, underground desolated places, and far from any normal civilization. Definitely not fun when dang thing's installation does not work. Then after work, no place to really relax. Casino worker. Dealing with drunk, idiotic people all day is not fun. I'll bet. I hate working retail and can't imagine if my customers were all plastered and thought it was my fault they gambled away their money, haha. Video game tester is a lot of throw a lot of crap at this wall and see if you accidentally go through it for 5 hours and a lot less. Please beta test our game from start to finish, have fun. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.